I'm Hilmar Veigar Pétursson, CEO of CCP.
So, Hilmar, what do you think it is about EVE Online that has had it withstand the test of time?
It's definitely the sandbox aspect of the game, which has led to this kind of huge social component. And while the game is pretty good, then it's really why people end up playing the game for 16 years, like some have done, is because of the community that has formed around the game.
So talk about, obviously you have events all around the world this year in Australia, UK, here in Las Vegas. What's it like coming to these events and seeing your community, in person?
So we've always had a lot of events. We've had FanFest in Iceland, we have had EVE Vegas going for a long time, and often we have events a lot around sort of trade shows or EVE players just frankly come to trade shows where we're showing the game. But this year we cranked it up a notch and went to 7 different places around the world. And I've been to Australia, Finland, Vegas, Brazil, London. And I think my takeaway from that is that the communities in different areas are very different. And that's a great reminder that EVE offers such a diversification of play styles and kind of different communities. There are kind of these endless micro communities in EVE. And it's been interesting to go to each place and find like a pure form of a different type of community. It certainly opened up my eyes towards, often we look at the game way too much in averages. We do average of this, and it's actually, the interesting signal is in the sort of outliers. And we've certainly found some of them as we've traveled the world.
As CEO, you travel so much during the year. How does that affect your job? Because you're very busy. You're a very busy man as well.
Yeah. So traveling has always been a big part of my job. We have offices around the world. So and the industry is very international. So adding this on top of that has been a bit of a challenge. And I might have overdone it at some point over the summer and into the fall, but it has been worth it. We have gained a whole new insight into what's going on in the game by meeting all these kind of micro communities.
Now, in the CCP games, EVE is obviously your flagship, big guerrilla game. But you guys also have a plethora of other games. For instance, I loved Spark when you guys did that game. That game is absolutely fantastic. Are you planning on doing more original IPs like that in the future?
Yeah, so Spark is a fantastic VR experience. It's still going. There are people playing Spark every day. We actually did an update to the game earlier this year. And it's just a damn shame that the VR market is taking a while to pick up. We will continue to do these more sort of experimental things as we've always done. And for every experiment we make, we learn something new. We learned a lot from the elements we've done in VR. We're now doing a lot of experimentation on mobile. We're also doing things like EVE Ether Wars to sort of figure out how we sort of unlock the next stage of evolution for sort of these huge fleet engagements. So even if we're sort of straying the course once in a while off the straight and narrow EVE path, every little tangent has led to new findings, which we have then even incorporated into EVE.
Now, I have to ask, with EVE Online being such a popular IP, have you ever considered doing like a Netflix series or a feature film movie or anything like that takes place in the EVE universe?
Yes, we have absolutely done that. Many people have come to us over the years. It is a big undertaking to do that, right. I hope we'll get around to it at some point, but it's kind of a nice thing with EVE. There's no expiry date really. The longer the game goes on, the better that idea becomes. Mm-hmm. So there's no need to rush into it. We're going to be doing this for decades to come, and if we don't put it on TV, we're not doing our jobs. But it's not like a big priority right now. The priority is on the game itself.
A lot of games, have communities that developers interact with to get feedback on the game, but your community is special. You guys have a community-found board member within the game that approach you once a year to talk about things that are happening in-game, kind of like a democracy in-game, talking to like the dictators of the universe. How did something like that come about in your game, and why is it only in your game that we see this?
So the idea for the CSM, or the Council of Stellar Management, came about in late 2003. I think I started the first one kind of in November 2003. And it was born from the fact that we were, obviously, the game was just released, there was a lot of activity, a lot of feedback, a lot of elements. And it was mostly taking place on a forum, just around forum. And when you discuss complicated topics with people on a forum, it gets unproductive fairly quickly. So I was like, I wish we could just have everyone and just like hash it out in person. And why don't we just do that? And that's where the first CSM was formed. We first started by just picking people, and we ran that version of the CSM into 2004. Then we stopped it. Then we rebooted it again in 2008, and then we introduced the election process because we wanted to find like more of an agency for players to be a part of that. Which the other method where we're handpicking people just led to it wasn't as vibrant as when you have people elect them. And then we've been doing that ever since. I think the reason why that is kind of only in EVE and nowhere else is because no game really needs something like that. I think every game will benefit from it, but we need it. The game is so complicated, the game belongs so much to the players that we are very often like an airplane maker that doesn't know how to fly their own airplanes. So talking to pilots once in a while is something very important.
Yeah, speaking of that, your game is it's very grounded. It's very realistic in terms of like what a space, because pilots don't really fly, like they don't really fly with their eyes. They use their instruments most of the time, and that's what you're doing in EVE. You're not dodging meteors in real time. You're actually, looking at them, seeing the distance on your dashboard, and then, orbiting it or approaching it and keeping it a safe distance. Did you guys do any like research of like real space travel and implement that into your game and try to think, how could we make this as realistic as possible, but at the same time fun for the gamer?
So we actually, if you look at the space simulation aspect of EVE, it is the paradigm we were going for was not necessarily space. Like if you were to make a true physics-based space game, it is very different than something like EVE. Like you wouldn't have terminal velocity, things would be going very fast.
It would take you forever to get somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And also like seeing things and finding things in space is super hard because everything moves so fast, it's so tiny, and like doing like a realistic space simulation would be a very alien concept to people. And of course you have something like Kerbal Space Program and things like that which are going for that. We actually the paradigm we were going for was much more naval combat than a space game. And if you really look at what EVE is, it is much closer to being a submarine game than a space game. So when you look at something like Into the Abyss, we're frankly even leaning a little bit into what the game is actually about. It is a lot more like driving a naval ship or a submarine than it is about like a true simulation of space. That's why we have like a fixed horizon. Like everything in EVE happens on a horizon, which would never be in space. You would be rolling around and you would be endlessly confused. The game is confusing enough not to add that. So we were approaching it in more like what you would imagine space to be rather than what it concretely is.
So you guys have access to data that no one else can see in the world. When you look at that data and you see how people play, how do people mainly explore your world? Are they mostly pirating? Are they mostly combat? Because for me, I did a lot of mining when I played. I thought that was just simple. It was fun. I'm a simple working class miner. What's the most common practice you see people play in your game?
So the game is a lot more about mining and PvE than people think. Obviously the context of all of that is because it is an open sandbox PvP game, and that gives meaning to everything else. But a lot of what people actually end up doing in EVE is a lot of, like you say, working class miner kind of activity. And sometimes we were had mixed emotions about that because we were sort of going more for PvP. But we're becoming a lot sort of more sophisticated in understanding that all the grinding that does occur in the game through kind of, like you say, working class activities. They give context to the moments where you are doing PvP, because that makes everything real. There's real effort behind it. There's something real at stakes. So the game is a lot more about PvE than people think.
Your in-game economy is absolutely amazing. It's a player-driven economy. But do you guys, as the studio, do you ever have to step in to like fix something that's incredibly broken, or if someone's doing something really bad and like hurting the player economy, do you guys have to step in and fix that, or do you just kind of let it run its course, considering it's just like a real-life economy?
So just like any real-life economy, you have to have regulation and you have to enforce them and you have to evolve. Like no real-world economy has just run laissez-faire for any periods of time. It just all runs amok. Humans are extremely intelligent and creative, and Eve has some of the most intelligent and creative people in the world. So you have to monitor the situation and make fixes all day long. Right now, this year, we've been pushing a lot against botting in the game, which has been a topic that has kind of grown up over time. So we have taken an extremely harsh stance on that, and that has helped a lot with balancing out the economy. Now we have a bit of a wealth distribution problem. There are some people which have built very safe ways to create a flow of resources and money, which are too stable and dependable, and it's very difficult to disrupt them. All the players have very little agency in it, so that is a big project going forward, is to sort of balance out the risk-reward dynamics, which are off in some areas of the game.
And last question is, what can players expect next from EVE Online?
Yeah, so what we were introducing here at the show, we started something over the summer, which has been called the Chaos Era, where we've been doing actually fairly simple changes to the game, but are very impactful and very polarizing, and changes that some people love and some people hate, but they're not changes that people are kind of meh about. This is a fairly sharp change from what we've been done before, where we've been doing a lot of slow evolution, a lot of consultation, a lot of sort of careful changes. I mean, that's fine for a period of time, but it led to a bit of a stagnation. So now we've been shaking it up quite a bit in the past sort of 6 months, and now we were introducing how we're going to carry that energy forward. Now we have actually a much higher cadence. One of our designers here was introducing what he is doing with his team Talos, where they're going to be making a change every 2 weeks, which are kind of in the spirit of these meaningful, non-grey changes. They're either black or white. Then we're rolling into that a new concept for next year, where we're going to be running every quarter something which is, you could call it like a season, but we're doing kind of an EVE spin on it. It's currently called quarters, where quadrants, where kind of each quarter of the year is divided into sort of these sort of mini seasons, where a lot of things are going to be sort of thematically consistent throughout all that. So next year you will be seeing a much more dynamic and ever-changing EVE Online than you have ever seen before.